So Amy and Krystal, what is one piece of advice you would give to a recent college grad at the start of their career? So they just graduated, they're looking for a job. What is one piece of advice you would give? Whoever wants to jump in first.
I would say definitely it's a lot of reflection in yourself after you graduate, because at least for me, something that I'm still trying to figure out myself is that because I was such an active student in the past, when I graduated, I didn't realize how much time I have in my hands. And I, even still to this day, I'm trying to figure out what to do with all the time that I do have that is outside of the work time, because, you know, it gets a little stressful mentally because you're so used to having either breaks between classes, or you're used to a spring break or a summer break, winter break, whatever the case, whatever breaks we have on in the school year. This is my first official full year of work, so I am starting to feel a little bit of the burnout because I saw you guys went to spring break and made me very jealous. But it's the fact that I saw that and I was just like, you know, just standing in my sofa and just going like, wow, what do I do? You know, I can't, it's not like I can go on a 2-week vacation to Florida or anything, you know? So I think definitely a lot of self-reflection would be something that I would encourage you all to do. You know, if you know, for example, if you are moving to a new location for work, definitely look into what are some of the things that you might be interested in that city. For example, I'm also a Chicago native, so I moved from Chicago to Peoria, Illinois, which is about like a 2.5-hour drive, which is a little rough. I'm also first generation student, so being the first to graduate and the first to move out of the house was very scary for me and my family. My dad was in denial when I told him I had to move. He was like, no, you're not. You're not moving. And I'm like, yes, I am. I kind of have to. So having to adjust that for myself mentally and for my parents too, since it was such a big move for them, was very important. I ended up, once I moved out in the summer, I ended up joining a soccer league in Peoria because I used to play soccer in high school, and then I brought that back into my life. So the season's over, so that's why I'm back to the drawing board. What should I do during this time? So yeah, definitely a lot of reflection and see what are some of the things that you can do with your extra time.
Yeah, I love this question, Maya. I would say two things. One, the first thing is networking. Happy to be a connection to any of you on LinkedIn. Like, this is what I tell my current students in Braven, like, you really don't know who is in front of you and like who can possibly open the door for you to that next opportunity, or even connect you to, to a connection. So networking, and then there's never like, it's really never too early to get started, even as freshmen and sophomores, to start making connections with alumni, like if there's going to be a potential interest in your industry. And then the second thing that I would say that I've learned now, like I've been in the workforce for close to like 10 years since Valpo, is like not to sell yourself short. And I think this is culturally, we've been taught to take a slice of humble pie, and it's just not the thing that's going to like really help you advance in your career. So I like now like really speak truth to what my talents, my strengths are, like unapologetically. And I think I could have done that very much earlier in my career, like even coming like in my first job out of college. Like, don't sell yourself short on what your talents are. Some of you may resonate with this, but like even the role that we've played in our families or as a caregiver, like what you've done for your families, like all of those are transferable skills that you could be talking about in your very first job. So don't sell yourself short. Like, don't be the first person to tell yourself no before someone else does. So those are the two things I would say, that and networking.
Great. Any follow-up questions from the group?
I think I have. What was, sorry, I can't remember if it's Amy or Krystal. I think it's Amy. Was your first job out of college the nonprofit that you're working for, or was it something different?
No, it was something different. So my first job was with this, it was with Adler University. So it was a graduate school in professional psychology. So I was actually advising students who are much older than me for graduate and for master's and doctorate level degrees in social work and psychology. So I've had a very everything has been in education. So I started in higher education, and then I actually quit and I went to take a teaching fellowship abroad. So I went to Lyon, France to teach English in France for a year. And then I came back and started work in the nonprofit sector. But my nonprofit work has always been in college access. So working with first generation students to, they were going to be the first in the family to go to school. And then now Braven, so this is the fifth organization that I'm working for. So I've only actually been at Braven. It's been less than a year, but I love it so far.
I don't know if this is this is a very simple question, but how do you network? People say that all the time, and I can go up and talk to someone, and I'm like, does this mean we networked? What does it entail?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And Krystal, feel free to chime in. And I actually think network isn't it sometimes isn't an accessible word. So just think about making it's just making a connection, making a professional connection, really fostering a conversation. But in that conversation, in that connection, you're essentially delivering your pitch. These are what my interests are. This is the career that I'm looking to get into. Is there someone that you can connect me to? Or do you essentially you're making an ask at the ends of your pitch. And when you're in a networking session for someone, whether it's making a connection on LinkedIn, or it's do you have any roles that you're hiring for in the next couple of months, or internships that you can get in front of me? Yeah.
I don't know, it just feels like using people. I know it doesn't, but I don't know. I feel I've been taught to just have a conversation, and if they need something of you, you just they ask. And I feel if I would ask oh, do you have any jobs? I feel that's just oh, I'm only using you for this job. I don't know. I've been talking to my parents, and they have a skew view on it, if that makes sense.
It takes a lot of practice. Yeah, it's you have to lean into the awkwardness of it.
So I can add a little bit more to what you were saying, Amy. So definitely, LinkedIn is always a good start. But I would say, because, since you guys are just freshmen and sophomores, I'm hoping that you guys will start to join a lot of the conferences and conventions for the, I think L.I.V.E went to a couple, the Hispanic leadership conference or something along those lines. Definitely. So there's one thing of just being hey, you want to scan my LinkedIn thing and let's exchange LinkedIn's. And then the second would be actually following up with the LinkedIn request and the connection that you have. Because, and this is the same way, if you collect a business card from somebody, because they still do that, send some physical business cards, definitely still follow up with them, because I feel there's always just that initial connection, and then it stops right there, and then it'll be a couple years later, and then the person won't remember you. You guys might have each other's LinkedIn's, but there's no remembrance of the interaction. So definitely follow up with whoever you're trying to communicate with. And then as to the second part, it's very awkward to ask for something. That's something that definitely I had a bit of an issue with too. Engineering is a highly, highly competitive major and a highly competitive industry. So there are people that have no shame at all, and they say, I would like to have this type of opportunity, X, Y, and Z. Do you have it? Yes or no? And for us, I feel it's also a cultural thing, because for us Latinos and Hispanics, we're just very humble to people, and we're very careful of our words. We're very we don't want to be a bother to people. It's basically what kind of my impression and the impression of my friends, that we all kind of have that same feeling, that we don't want to be in the way of other people. We don't want to put ourselves out there. And definitely it takes practice, but the end goal is that you would like to have a job, whether you got it from the person that you're trying to connect with or from another person. So definitely don't be afraid to put yourself first. It might be a little awkward at first, but if you are a genuine person and you're genuinely having a conversation with somebody, you'll notice that it'll come out more naturally. If you are going for a search approach, then do whatever you need to do. But for me personally, I like to have more of a genuine conversation before asking the person, and then that way we know each other's stories a little bit more, and then ask the question. But if you're a very straightforward person, go ahead. So don't cut yourself short, kind of like what Amy was mentioning earlier, because I've noticed a lot of these opportunities get past us, especially for Latinos, because we're too shy of speaking up. So don't be afraid of it.
Really great advice. And I'll share too, while we're on the subject of networking too, that right now, I mean, we're chatting with Amy and Krystal, but if you have any desire to chat with an alum in your field, you can always use your resources at Valpo and reach out, and we can connect you with someone in your field. You have so many resources at your disposal, so definitely use them, and we can help facilitate that conversation for you before you're thrown out into the working world, and we can help you start with networking now. So that's always a resource that's available to you. Let me grab my next question here. Oh, I'm glad we have this question on the list too, especially since you're all freshmen and sophomore. And Amy touched on this a little bit already, but if you were to redo your time at Valpo, what would you change, if anything? Maybe nothing, but what would you do differently?
A lot. Definitely, confidence was a big thing for me my freshman, sophomore year. Similar to Amy's story, I also came from a very diverse background for middle school and high school, and coming into Valpo was a big shocker for me. Especially for engineering courses, I was the only Hispanic person or minority in general in my classes, and maybe one of two women in the classes. So it was very, very difficult for me to really open up. I really cut myself short and just kind of hid in my little bubble a lot. So it took me a long time to finally express myself out, especially within my field. Outside of campus, I didn't have too much of a problem, but after joining L.I.V.E, it helped me open up. But definitely, I would say if I had to do a do-over, I would just say be more confident in myself and my ability to do the assignments and the classrooms that I was taking. Something that I heard today from a Caterpillar seminar that I was listening to. One lady, she was talking about confidence, and she said that confidence doesn't always mean that you know the right answer. Confidence can also just mean the fact that you have the strength to try to find a solution or try to find some sort of solution to anything. So it doesn't mean you're always right. It just means that you're willing to try. And that really resonated to me even now. Like, I wish I had heard that type of feedback since I was a freshman, because that would have helped me a long, long way. It took a professor to reach out to me because I was too quiet. I was too scared to ask for help. That was another thing too. And that just also goes back to just like a cultural thing too. We're just, we want to do things on our own without asking for help. So if you definitely need it, don't be afraid to reach out to your professors or whoever you can find in, because that'll help you in the long run, because that's just supporting yourself. And then I would say the last thing too, if you are a very, very outgoing person and you have more than 5 activities under your belt on campus, there's a thing that my professor made me do. I want to say it was my sophomore year, because that was the most overwhelming year. He gave me 3 sticky notes that said the word no. And he said, by the end of the semester, I want you to hand out these sticky notes to somebody if they ask you to do something for them. Because I would say yes to everything. Like, Krystal, would you make this flyer? Yes. Krystal, would you like to volunteer for this? Yes, yes, yes. But I overworked myself so much to the point where it affected my grades. So I would definitely, don't be afraid to say no to an activity or whatever your workload may be. Obviously, your classes come first, so don't be afraid to stand up for yourself.
Yeah, apart obviously, like I do wish, and like I said, hindsight 2020, that I would have invested in L.I.V.E as a group, like had that as my repertoire. But on the large, like I don't know that I would change much. I really enjoyed my college experience. Actually, I think it really pushed me out of my comfort zone. Um, I like I said, I made some of my best friends. Like I really enjoyed it. The one thing I think apart that I really like that Krystal touched upon this is the confidence piece. And again, just having the tools now to speak to this. I think there were quite a few interactions that I would have now considered, like, didn't have the language for it then, but I probably now can say, oh, those were definitely microaggressions. And whether it be like with administration or professors or even like peers of mine, whether it be in like other social settings, that I don't think I had the language for then, but I would have like spoken power to those. Like that's something that I would have changed. But on the large, I like pretty much really enjoyed my Valpo experience.
All right, any follow-up questions from the group on that advice?
It was really good advice.
That was excellent. I love the no sticky notes. I think I should do that too. I think that's an awesome. All right, next question here. All right, so in your current position, what are some challenges you face and how do you manage those?
I can go first. So my set of priorities and challenges changes on the day-to-day, it changes on the week. I'm a manager of 2 people. And just because I am like having to lead strategy for the Chicago region, like for our program, I think some of the challenges are really like having to constantly have a pulse on like what affects my people on the ground, but then like having to zoom out to like 100-foot altitude and think about forecasting for like the next few years. Like, are the decisions that we're making this week going to impact us a year, 2 years? Like, I have to be able to be very flexible to switching hats, if that makes sense, like very, very quickly around like, what are we doing this week and how is this going to impact us like 6 months, a year down the road? And then the other challenge as a manager is that like it's never lost on me the responsibility that I have, and I know this is going to be one of the questions, like in really preserving mental health and psychological safety for my team. Like that is a responsibility that I don't take lightly as a manager, because I've been at the ends of like having a manager who didn't do that well, and especially like 2 years well into a pandemic, like doing that for like people's livelihood is really, really important. So just like constantly having a pulse, like it definitely adds a layer of like of pressure, but in a sense of like it's responsibility. Like you're caring for people's lives, you have to advocate for your team's needs. So that's a challenge that stays with me, and I have to think about pretty consistently.
I would say for me, some of the challenges that I face as an engineer, I would say is the capacity of learning things on the go and on the job. You know, there's only so much that you can learn in school, and a lot of the things that you do end up learning is usually at work while you're doing the work. So for me, I don't have a background in engines at all. I am an electrical engineer. I have not touched a mechanical course throughout my whole time. Like I don't even know stuff about cars. Like that's how bad I don't know about engines. But my job, it fully involves engines, and the position that I was selected to, my manager had the goal and the intention of putting me in a position where I do get to learn all of the components and, you know, learn as I go, so that in the future, I'm able to move into a position where it involves more physical work, which is something that I personally would like to do, because I'm not a software person. I like to be more hands-on. But the challenge that I was facing though with myself was that I would put myself through a lot of stress because I thought that my learning pace was too slow. I always questioned myself, am I doing this? Am I taking too long to submit this report? Am I, you know, I still don't understand the concept, but I've asked a million questions already. Why can't I understand this? So it's this constant push of like, you know, am I learning fast enough? Am I too slow? Within my group, I have two other peers, coworkers who also are recent grads. So we're all kind of learning together, which in a way for me, it's really great to see people that are within my age group. But at the same time, I kind of have this like internal competition with them. They don't know that I'm doing this, but in my mind, I'm like, he's almost done with his report. Why am I not done with my report? And, you know, comparing myself a lot to people. So that's something that I've been working on personally. And I recently had my my review with my manager, and I asked him these concerns. I was like, am I doing okay? How am I doing? Do I have any negative comments, any feedback that I can do? And he said, you're doing fine. He's like, everyone's very actually impressed with your work, and I haven't had any bad note from you. So do whatever you're doing, continue what you're doing. And that was like the refresher for me, that I was like, okay, I'm actually doing great. I shouldn't be worrying about these things. So definitely for those who are or if you know anybody who's ready to go into the workforce, just don't beat yourself up with it. You're learning at the right pace, unless somebody tells you, and then, you know, you adjust. But in general, you're usually doing a great job, so don't worry too much.
Awesome. Any questions on that? No? Okay. Let me head back to my list here. Some of our questions we kind of touched on organically, which is awesome. They came up on their own. But let's see. So, can you speak a bit about diversity, equity, and inclusion within your workplace? Does it need to improve, and how do you encourage DEI within your own sphere of influence? So kind of a big question. Take your time, think on it.
Yeah, so I was actually very surprised because engineering in general is a very predominantly white, predominantly men type of industry, and it is in general. But I was very surprised that when I joined, I was, like I said, I had two other coworkers that are within the same age. We have an intern that's around our age too. So age-wise, we're all very similar. And we also have, including myself, there's 3 women in our group. On top of the team that we have in India, I specifically work in a small subsystem, and within our subsystem, we're all women. And that was a big shocker to me, because I had thought that I was going to be in an office with a bunch of old white men and being very intimidated by them, but it ended up being the most diverse group that I've ever seen. Not even my engineering classes could outbeat my group that I'm with right now. It's a lot of international people, specifically more heavily in India. So it's great. I really enjoy it. You know, I've heard plenty of stories from my coworkers before COVID that people would bring like traditional foods. If it was a traditional holiday that's not like a US typical holiday, they'll bring in like the food and the snacks, and we sort of do. So that's something that I am slowly trying to incorporate in our office too. Like if there's any like Mexican traditions, I definitely bring it up to them, and then we try to celebrate together. But like the Reyes Magos in January, like I tried bringing like a little rosca in, but that's when the COVID thing spiked up a little bit, so I put that on pause. But that's how I've been trying to incorporate culture and diversity, more culture and diversity in our offices, just by showing the Mexican culture, and yeah, very satisfied with my group so far.